Monday.
Hi, everyone.
Peggy's here.
We're
It's
almost
live.
Peggy
Live.
Keller,
live.
our
Wow.
editor.
My goodness. I guess it's Monday. And it is a Monday. And I'm Jeff Pulver. And welcome to a really amazing show. Of course, if it's Mondays, it's time for
Ask the Oracles.
And we are here. And we have a wonderful guest. And before we get to our guest, who has I just was in awe of listening to the background of what we're going to hear today. But Monty and Amy, I have to ask, how are you doing?
We're hanging in there. Like everybody else, we're trying to make sense of a crazy world. Astrologically, it's you don't even have to know astrology to
We've
look at
been
this.
looking at the astrology. I had a birthday last week, so we were looking at my chart and then the general chart. Everyone has this intense concentration going on somewhere in their chart.
Yeah, so right today we have 4 planets in Aquarius. So we'll be very futuristic and we'll take the best of the past. I mean, and plus everything's in Aries. You know, we have the Sun and Mercury in Aries. Jupiter and Neptune are coming up to conjoin over here in Pisces. So that's why it's a sad time, but at the same time, it asks us to be unemotional. But at the same time, it asks us to learn from the whole process, and which brings us to today's subject. It's so perfect.
Simran, you inspired this because it has to do with your new book, but our topic is Unconventional Blessings, which is perfect for all that Aquarian energy, right?
Well, we should introduce her.
Welcome, Simran, an old friend who I admire so much, that we've known for many years, and we love the work you do. Welcome to Ask the Oracles.
Oh, thank you. Well, I love you both. I love everything that you do, and I'm honored to be here and play and laugh through all of the unconventional blessings that we all get.
Yeah, and we have wonderful. Our audience is wonderful. A lot of people come every week, and if they can't, they come every other week. But it's a real community feeling here. So you're among friends, right, Jeff?
You. Nice
Absolutely.
To be among
We
friends.
have friends who join us across 8 different time zones, and when Will joins us, sometimes it's around 12 time zones, and from all over the world, and it's just an amazing, comfortable place to have conversations. Could you tell us in your own words what unconventional blessings mean to you, and how that inspired you to do the work that you've been working on for a while?
Absolutely. It was kind of organic, and probably like most people's lives, I bumped up against a lot of challenge and obstacles and what life normally brings: chaos, change, darkness, death, all these things that we seem to hit up against repeatedly in our lifetimes. It's not like we ever get done with this personal growth work. And a period in my life, I hit up against the most challenging experience, the most painful experience that I could ever have encountered. And in that moment, I decided, I've been so devoted to the light for so long, trying to spread that message. And I realize how much I've gained from that. But for me to have created this specific moment in my life that would bring everything down to the ground, the darkness must have something to teach me. And so I asked myself, could I be as committed to the darkness as I've been to the light? And because I knew there was gold in there, something inside of me said, when we meet up against conflicts and chaos and obstacles and challenge, there must be good in that too. There must be a reason we came to this planet of duality. There must be a reason that all our astrological charts have that red in there, and that we are supposed to know something from here. And so I went on this inner journey. It took 7 years, and I discovered exactly what each of these blessings are here to teach us. And there is actually gold in the darkness. There is our true gold if we're willing to face the life we've been given fully and completely. And so as I came out of that experience, I had no intention of writing 3 books, but I was given 3 tables of contents and guided that this information would be especially supportive at this time as we're facing so much. And I'm just happy that all the information is out now.
I loved reading a bit about this new book that's out now. It's called Being. And that
the new one is Living. The first one is Living.
Oh, that's right. Next one's Being. Yes.
Yes.
But you articulate so much about this real stuff that we all go through, which I've been thinking a lot, and everybody has because of the COVID lockdown, how to turn that, and how has it been an unconventional blessing for many people. I can see it in our wonderful audience here who shares a lot with us, that people have gone to another level of spirituality. They've learned new skills. They've used the time productively to get their health together. Many, many people. Of course, there's a lot of people that it brought down in different ways. But that's a good example, right, of this time specifically.
Most definitely. I think the COVID period was a great time to stop people and slow them down. And what I have learned about these blessings is that there is such a larger picture that we are a part of. And we get so focused on our little lives and what we're here to do, yet there's a part of us that wants to serve, that wants to give, that wants to love, that wants to impact change in our communities, globally, however it is we want to impact change, or even in our families. But we don't realize that these moments that show up, they are actually the doorways into that. Our karma is our dharma. If we simply commit ourselves to the lives we've been given, then all of a sudden we are shown the steps that will open us to that greater service in the world that does actually ripple out. And so COVID was this time that I think stopped everyone long enough to realize, am I living the life I'm meant to be living? Am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing for myself and my soul and my family? Or have I gotten caught up in this conditioning in this world and what the world is telling me to do? And so it was a beautiful time. And whatever we faced mentally, emotionally, physically, it had to do with us, but it also had to do with the balancing of the energies of the world on a greater scale. And if we can realize we're being used well by life, no matter what our life looks like, then all of a sudden we can embrace every circumstance that comes our way.
Yes. It's funny, the duality, I mean, it's taught in so many philosophies, but why do we think it's going to be any different? You know, like it's not the outcome I wanted, or people, you see that in tarot readings, right? When you pull the outcome card, it's like, damn, that's not the one I want. I only want a good outcome, right? But we know the tarot taught us so much to embrace all the different highs and lows of life. I mean, that's one of the beautiful things about it.
Well, we either believe in a divine plan or we don't. We can't have it both ways. And so, this series came about and evolved into 3 books. It's actually it's our multidimensional experience as one human being, but we have these 3 different levels. And when you talk about duality, the second book, which releases in May, is called Being, the 7 Illusions That Derail Personal Power, Purpose, and Peace. And one of them is the illusion of duality. It looks like we're separate. It looks like light and dark. It looks like good and bad. It looks like contrast. But all of that is oneness. We can't have one without the other. Our wholeness is our dark and our light. And so if I can just bring compassion and unconditional love and acceptance to everything that exists, that in itself, I think, brings more beauty to the world and more healing to ourselves and the world.
It's true. I just want everyone to know all your links are in the chat about your new books. So it works on a small level. I know once the one kind of real job I ever had when I was like 21, it wasn't even that real a job. I painted paintings for hotels. It was like an art factory. And at one point the boss said, Amy, I think you should go do what you're really meant to do. And I don't think this is what you're really meant to do. So I got fired, and I felt kind of hurt for a minute, but then I knew it was just the right thing and an unconventional blessing, so all those sort of everyday kind of experiences instead, there's the big collective of what we're supposed to learn about life, but also these little challenges that aren't always the worst thing, but you still are disappointed. It's maybe not what you wanted to hear or what you thought should happen.
It's always also timing too, because we don't always see it at that moment, right? So like,
right.
There's something to be said about, during COVID, people who were in the real estate industry and people who were in the divorce industry, the marital industry did quite well during COVID. And post-COVID, I think you'll see lots of relationship status changing and lots of people moving around. And if you happen to be a headhunter, have discovered that they maybe want to take a different position in their life and do things differently. From a perspective of why me, I remember, I don't know how many years ago, but it had to be at least, I don't know, probably more than 10 years ago, maybe 12, 15 years ago. I remember one summer on Long Island, there was this terrible lightning storm that went through my town. And the house in front of my house the tree right in front of my house got hit by lightning. And it cost $1,800 to get it removed. And I was just so angry that, oh my God, why do I have to pay this money? Because like, why me? Why now? At this moment, is my tree hit by lightning? But the following summer, we had a little freak tornado come through, and it went up down the main street that I lived off of. And everyone's house almost had a tree fall on them, but me.
Huh.
So I was blessed.
Good example.
That I got hit by lightning the year before, so it was so it did not affect. And of course, then I do have my classic story of getting fired in July of 1996, which saved my life because I did work in the World Trade Center.
No.
And 3.5 years later, 9/11 happened, and so but it's perspective, right? It's understanding it and decompacting it and appreciating, the unspoken serendipity and synchronicity of what happens when you have these unconventional blessings. That because when you're in that moment, it's like when I got fired for the first time ever in my life. Like, how could I go home and tell anyone I got fired? Ironically, that was instead of going home, I actually went to the movies and I saw Independence Day, which was because you see, because one of the other things about unconventional blessings for me is and one of my biggest fights in my life always has been inertia, that I find signs that I must change, right? That I must take action. And when I don't take that action, action is taken for me. And I had a wonderful job. I had sold my business to this company 3 years before. The first 18 months was a wonderful blessing. And then for 18 months, I actually did not like what I did, but I wouldn't quit because I was overpaid. And I did not know what I was going to do next, but I had ideas. But getting fired actually took me away from Wall Street and put me down the path of helping to change the way the world communicates. And had I not gotten fired, I had the kind of job that I very well could have been there with 700 of my peers on 9/11. And so I'm quite happy and forever grateful that I got fired on that day. And I've learned to have a deep respect for moments, right? And not to say why me, although I might say that anyway, but then to have the perspective to go back and understand
Jeff,
why.
What you're saying is so key, because I think that's the question that we always ask is, why is this happening? Or why me? Or how come now? Why did this have to show up in my life and blow up my life? And the one thing that I want people to understand about these specific unconventional blessings or anything that's impacting their life is it's happening because it's not truly aligned with your highest self and your highest expression. Life is always trying to lead us to our best expression and our greatest good. And what I discovered in my own life was that the things that were showing up, they were only showing up because I did something from a lower octave of myself that led to choices that created a certain experience that then put me in a certain position. And if that was not truly aligned with what my soul wanted, then things had to show up to shift that towards where my soul direction wanted to go. And that there's a certain pattern. The first blessing is life. And the next thing that's going to happen is challenge. And then is going to come conflict, inner or outer. And then chaos is going to erupt, because that's where new creativity is going to come. But before the chaos creates creativity, there's going to be obstacles. And we're going to have to walk through that darkness, that valley of shadow and death, to shed all the layers that we've accumulated that are not truly us, until finally the death comes, where that identity is shed so that we can rebirth into new identity and new creativity. So it's this cycle that really does happen in a very strategic and organized way. And unless we're willing to shed the identities and go back to the place of not knowing and complete obliteration, then we're not fulfilling what the cosmos created us to be, which is creation. The universe got created through a hole of darkness. And we have to sometimes get to that hole of darkness within ourselves to birth something new, whether that's a new life, a new relationship, a new way of creativity, a new expression. And so it really is a beautiful process, just like nature. But I think our minds judge everything that happens and attaches everything that happens based on how we want to compare ourselves with the rest of the world. If we just allowed what was happening in our life, we would see we're being led to these beautiful, as you say, synchronistic moments into something that's greater for us. And then we get to truly experience aliveness.
What you're describing really in martial arts, the goal is to take the energy of the aggressor and channel it and control it. It's not to prevent it, because you can't. You're under attack. And so the negative things we're talking about now, it's very actually similar to astrology as I see it, because the planetary energies are happening. And you have the choice of either resisting, which is not the greatest idea in the world, or using those energies, being aware of those energies, and working with them, flowing with them. Because, for example, the planet Uranus, which right now is squaring to Saturn, Uranus is the energy in our lives that wants us to be happy when we wake up, excited, wants life to be new and exciting. You resist that energy and it'll help you. It'll help you in the worst way at the worst possible time. But if you're doing that, if you're bringing newness into your life, it'll help you that way.
You're cooperating with the energy then.
Right. So it's either flow with the river or push the river. And pushing the river is never a great idea.
Also, it seems like we don't grow unless we have a challenge or a crisis, or that pushes us to expand and grow, like illness. I mean, unfortunately, I know in my own life that it has been an unconventional blessing when I've been challenged with bad illnesses. I mean, it's happened twice in my life where it led me into a whole new healing path and helped me learn about the mind-body connection and helped me, take responsibility and understand traumas in my life, what contributed to that. But I probably wouldn't have learned that unless I went through that.
Well, we are nature. We really are nature. We think we're these separate things. We think we're human beings. But if we look to nature, it shows us, the tree has to come from the seed, which has to push through the earth. The butterfly has to come from the cocoon, which has to push through that in order to find its wings. The rose has to move from a bud to a flower. We're just like that. And it is that stretching, it's that tension, it's that push and pull of life that really brings out the best of us, that allows us to expand in the greatest possible capacity. Otherwise, we would just be stagnant always. And that's not why we came. And I think you both so beautifully illustrate the creative capacity, the way that you're constantly creating the beauty and the creativity, whether it's through your tapestries and your art forms, Amy, or whether it's through your astrology, Monty. We are meant to constantly create, and that can be through cooking, it can be through gardening, it can be through any number of things. But if we just look at what's in front of us that's calling for our attention and presence, I think ultimately every unconventional blessing is asking us to be more present, to simply feel and know what's in our surroundings and in our bodies, to hear from every level of our being what's being asked of us, whether it's the inner levels of being or whether it's the people closest to us. I think so often our world teaches us that we've got to go do something big out there. Really, the tremendous impact that we can have is very intimately around us. And if we can start there, it's going to ripple out in very, very grand ways.
So true.
I as somebody who counsels a lot of the people out here in the Hamptons, I know that it always comes down to how big is the yard sale going to be when you go, or how big is the dumpster going to be when you go,
Or the bonfire.
or the bonfire when they throw your crap out. I mean, and you have to ask yourself all the time, what is important? And I think that's what you're saying with your books and the whole series of the books is getting into. You're sort of giving everyone a carrier wave. I'm getting into Jeff's rice bowl now, sorry. but you get a carrier wave that you want to attach yourself to. So you
Is that a
can,
technical term?
it is a technical term. Jeff can explain. But you know, you want to ride someone, like Shem said, ride the wave. Yeah, ride the carrier wave of a spirit, the essence of spirituality, which is in your books.
Also, I think when something happens to challenge us, we don't always know why. I mean, there's the unknown, which is what scares us, right? We don't know how it's going to pan out. So I guess we have to have faith in that moment that there is an unconventional blessing in there, which helps calm our soul so that we can go forward and really be open to what's next. I mean, so I think we've seen in COVID, a lot of people want to go back to the normal, what was normal. We know that there's no old normal. This is going into the new future, which is scary, you know, how much things have changed and how much more it will change. But we have to have faith that it's a good thing in there, the gold, like you were talking about.
Well,
we will find the gold.
and the one thing that I realized most of all, because when you pull back for 7 years and you get very quiet and you do your constant inner work, not that I'm telling everyone they got to go do it for 7 years. That's what I did. But when I did that, I was able to watch the world in a really profound way. And what I discovered is that we're all deeply unconscious. We can think we're conscious, but we are deeply unconscious. And until we're willing to acknowledge and accept that, we cannot move beyond it. So as I said, when I went through that experience, I did say, well, for me to create this in my life, there must be parts of me that I haven't met yet that are creating this kind of reality outside of me. And so I am consciously going to go unconscious, because obviously I was unconscious before, but now I'm going to be conscious about my unconsciousness. And I'm going to let myself feel everything, because my biggest desire was to feel. And I don't know how everyone else is out there, but I don't know that we really have tapped into true humanity. We've created this broad umbrella about what humanity is, and it's this big thing out there projected just like we do everything else. But have we really tapped into our humanity, the full depth of what that means to feel, know, and experience? And so as I watched the world, whether we moved through tragedies and horrors outside, or whether we moved through that interesting wave of political up and down that we all went through, or whether we moved through COVID, I got to watch people very, very closely. And what I saw is the same thing that I saw within myself, is that we are these robotic, unconscious creatures that are trying to do the best we can, that are trying to live according to the conditioned world, and bumping up against these unconventional blessings, trying to figure out why they keep happening when this is part of the landscape and structure of this planet. And then the deeper I went, I started to discover, oh, wait a minute, there's not just a shadow in me, there's an animal, and there's a monster, and there's a demon. And that's why I also see those things outside. And am I willing to love those parts of me, embrace those parts of me, see those parts of me, so that I can be compassionate to them, to be able to find the compassion to those things outside that are happening? Doesn't mean I condone the things outside that are happening, but can I see them in a different light, like Ukraine? Can I see both sides for what they are, and how they are not just good and bad, but how they are these balancing of energies, and how they're displaying the very humanity and God and demon inside of me? And that is what got me to tap into all of the depths of emotion. And the greatest of those emotions was grief. Grief was like this portal, this special doorway that led to this awareness of consciousness that I never would have accessed had I not let myself feel everything there is to feel. And so my greatest invitation to people is, are you willing to be truly human and have your humanity? Because it is precious and it is beautiful, and it requires us to feel all of our colors in our crayon box, every single emotion that we have, to the extreme intensity and depths that it is, because we're releasing not just from ourselves, we're releasing generations and ancestries of emotion that have been backlogged, that have not been allowed to fully flow. And I think that shows up in lots of ways, not only in our society, but Monty, does that show up in our charts?
Oh,
Does it
sure.
show up in our creativity, Amy? It shows up because it's so stuck inside the body. It's got to go somewhere.
Yeah, because if you don't let it flow, that's when we get sick and traumatized, and all the things we do have to be in touch with that. But it's nice if we have help, which your book does. I know Monty and I help each other with that. Monty helps his clients. I mean, it's good if someone has a perspective, that helps you be motivated and is your cheerleader and helps give you insight into how you are stuck or not seen or not appreciating yourself. I mean, self-esteem is such a huge element in all of this because it takes people's power away. They're doing it to themselves, and it's an ingrained thing, I guess, in humans. What do you think about that?
I just want to add, if I could, when you experience unconventional blessings, that sometimes it's almost like the universe is telling you to take a chance, that you're actually have a reason to believe in what it is you really want to do, particularly if it shifts you out of what you were doing. It sort of like comes in and replaces what you were, and now either that job is no longer there or the opportunity that you were focusing on is gone. So now what was blocking you is not there. So in all the cases I was thinking about while you were talking, the unconventional blessings created clearings for me. And it's as if someone had said, yes, we believe in you, so do it now. And don't ask, just make it happen. And so to have someone believe in you, or to have the light to believe in yourself, is a very strong gift. And so when we go through various unconventional blessings in our lives, there are moments when, while if you could just take that perspective that now you have everything you ever needed to make that dream happen, and all you have to do is do it, right? It's not to thinking about it, it's not to trying, it's putting yourself in flow to make it happen. And this is your time. And you now have that opportunity to breathe, to believe, and make it happen and make it so. And so with the advent of COVID, some people went at one level and looked at their relationships with themselves. They looked at with others, perhaps what they were doing. Sometimes if you took a look at the work you were doing and you realized if you were doing destination-based events and people were not traveling, maybe you were not going to do those this year because it's just not going to happen. So what else are you going to do? So I'm very grateful that my sister and I and our friend Harry, we got together and we started doing live internet TV shows. We've been able to, over the past almost 2 years, bring many diverse groups of people together and build micro communities amongst people who would never really get to meet. And after this period of time, we're an extended family because we didn't look for permission. We just made it happen. And the consequences of bringing people together is magical beyond words. And the energy that's shared collectively is really special. And so I do think that, we have both the individual journeys, the group journeys, and together it's what we experience it. And even if we never articulate a word about the challenges, people should know they're never really alone. And that when they see the universe giving them signs, you might want to listen. You might want to say, hey, it's for me now to take action, and it's okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I so agree with you, Jeff, on what you said. And I think we live in a world where part of personal growth and spirituality has purported this idea of be who you really are, become who you really are. But the ego takes those words and makes it something that we're supposed to attain and do. And so often when we bump up against the challenges, it's so that it deconstructs the identities that we have. We can either surrender to the pain and let that take us under, or we can surrender to our godhood, our divinity, our highest self. And we have to choose which one we want to surrender to. And then we live out that experience. And it's still, they both end up in the same place. They'll both take us to service. They'll both take us to purpose. One will be a little more challenging than the other, but they will all serve in the end. And I do think that the signs and the symbols and the synchronicities are these paths that are put on along the way to help guide us. I'd like to add that going into our emotions, feeling the things that come up, hitting these unconventional blessings, they can sometimes be excruciating. Who wants to do that work? Who wants to really feel all that stuff? No one wants to feel that stuff. No one wants to feel grief or pain or challenge or any of those things. And yet that's what we're here to do, to let that part dissolve, because that's the identities that have encrusted on, that have to release so that we can be our best selves and let go of things. When we stay hooked on a job that we don't want to leave, it's because we're hooked on an identity. And that's where the fear comes from, the fear of losing what we had, rather than realizing something greater is there in front of us. And so I love the fact that you've illustrated those examples, Jeff, of being able to take the unconventional blessing and see the light in it and move forward. And the only thing that I say to individuals, if you don't want to keep creating those same types of unconventional blessings, make sure along the way you do little bits of that feeling, that inner work, that deep dive to understand what really needs to die at that time, so that that energy can be transmuted and alchemized into something greater.
You were asking about astrology before. It might be simplistic, but when I counsel people, I explain to them that there's 3 levels: the spiritual, the mental, and the physical. If you deal with something on the spiritual level, or if you stay on that spiritual carrier wave I was talking about, and think and speak and act the way you're talking about, because what you're talking is really living. And if you can keep at that level, which is pretty intense for most people, but that's what we need, the philosophers and the people who are willing to go into the cave
That keep you
and keep you high-minded. But if you don't deal with it on the spiritual level, you're going to deal with it on the mental level. And if you don't deal with it on the mental level, it's going to be in your life as a physical event, as an illness, some kind of difficult dealings. But of course, that is simplistic, and we're all going to deal with loss, and pain is pain. But that's what I like to think, that if staying on that spiritual carrier wave is a good way to stay healthy and get yourself through the darkness, because sometimes there's just no light. And if it doesn't come from within you, you're not going to see.
It's like the moon card in the tarot. You have to have faith while it is dark.
Yeah.
That you will find the light. I think what you were saying, Simran, that grief is the most challenging of all. But that loss, and I've seen this in our life, I mean, it's a process different for every person, how they process that emotion. But it does always make your heart bigger in the end, because then we can empathize with everyone who goes through that. And I guess that's true of all the emotions, whether it's on the smaller level, somebody getting fired. If I've been fired, I can understand, what they're going through. But grief, we don't face death in our society, or we push it away. And I'm sure in different societies, maybe they embrace it more easily than we do. But we've matured and grown just because we've lost so many people that we love. You have to accept it, and to know that there's something greater. I mean, I do believe in the afterlife, especially because I live with a psychic.
Jeff was talking about the signs, symbols, and synchronicities. And
Yes.
I believe that, we're each having our own experience in a bubble of reality, and everyone outside of us has shown up for our experience so that we can really experience what we decided to. And as I looked at people that passed in my own life and the experiences that I had that brought so much grief, what I realized is every moment that comes up like that, it is not only a sign and a symbol, it is the synchronistic moment to let us feel not only the grief for what's happened there, but it simply was the catalyst to bring up the grief that's always been there.
Mm-hmm.
It's the mirror of some moment in time from the first 3 stages of our life that we never fully integrated and experienced. And most of what we experience in terms of unconventional blessings come from 0 to 7, ages 0 to 7, when we really are just physiology. We don't have a mental body yet that's formed. We don't have an emotional body yet that's formed. We are pure sponge. And as children, we take in these experiences around us, or the people around us that have been not feeling their emotions. We soak them up, And then we create these cycles. And part of the reason that 7 is in all 3 of these books is because I realized a cycle of 7 that creates an echo experience in our lives. And the experiences that most impacted me from 0 to 7, if I would count forward every 7 years from those experiences, I would find I re-experienced the same thing in a different way. And everybody can look at their life that way. If you went through a breakup at age 17, you're going to hit another one at 24, another one at 31, another one at 38. If you simply look at your life from 7-year increments from 0 to 21, you will see what physiologically affected you and ripples out as echoes. From 7 to 14, you will see the emotional impact that hit you and those experiences, and they will ripple out in 7-year increments as echoes. And you will see from 14 to 21, where you forged these beliefs that you were going to live because of all the things that happened to you, you will see how those belief systems ripple out in echoes beyond that time in 7-year increments. And I think the reason that that happens is so that they are pointers to go back to the original woundings that we finally clear and heal, because those are the original lies that covered up our true essence, that covered up what we truly are and who we're truly to be. And that's the basis of why I was guided to share this information across these 3 books, but also to help individuals understand we are part of a beautiful tapestry, both individually and collectively. And if we simply will look at our lives and what we've created, we will see the entire cosmos, because there is a huge universe outside of us, but there's an even bigger one inside of us. And we have to be willing to look at it.
And number 7 is reflected in so many places. Don't they say all your cells in your body regenerate every 7 years? And
Yes.
also the spectrum, the color spectrum, and it's biblical.
And it's the Saturn square in astrology. Saturn takes approximately 28 years to go around the solar system. So every 7 years you get tested, because Saturn is the teacher. And in legal terms, you can't be declared dead until you've been missing for 7 years. It occurs in a lot of legal stuff. 7.
That's interesting.
How is your book structured?
So I've written 3 books. The first one is Living, and it is about the unconscious, robotic, conditioned human and how we try to go through life, trying to get through, trying to move from surviving to thriving. And it moves through these 7 blessings of human experience to show you the endless cycles that take place. That one is released now. The second book is Being. That one releases at the end of May, and it is about the same through the same experience. We experience it 3 different ways. So this book experiences it through the shadow, the animal, the monster, and the demon part of us, the underworld. And this book touches more on how this aspect of us, this subconscious part of us, really is impacting our global events. That part of us that is so strong collectively is creating each and every weather pattern. It's creating each and every war, conflict, political issue, who's elected, who's not, whether there's a virus, whether there's not. It's all based on our subconscious and the underworld within us. And then the third book is Knowing, the 7 human expressions of grace. And we all want grace to fall in our lives, but for that to happen, we have to also be willing to give ourselves our human graces. And so as I moved through my grief process, I discovered 7 human graces that allow for the flowering of humanity. And so it is this process of really understanding who we are, not just as human beings, but as multidimensional beings that are having 3 experiences all at the same time. But our lenses are typically focused on one or the other. And that can change throughout the day. We might be the unconscious person at one aspect of the day, and then all of a sudden someone cuts in front of us on the highway, and all of a sudden we shift into the shadow. And then we end up seeing a billboard that says, you are loved, and we will rise into humanity and start to understand that we can forgive who just cut us off. So we have this wave that exists within us, just like the ocean that comes and goes. but it's being willing to understand that they are all active at the same time. It's just we're only allowing ourselves to be present with one of them at a time. Instead, if we can be present to all of them at the same time, we create wholeness. We create a greater bridge and access to our highest self, which then is of true service to the world.
Beautifully said. It sounds like a masterpiece. It's reading books together. Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's
It's
a
definitely
big,
my life's work.
it's a big birthing.
Triplets. Several months apart. Now, that's quite a miraculous thing to do.
But it goes back to creativity. I mean, this is like a major creativity to me. And when I start on a project, I mean, it washes everything away, all the blocks, all the struggles. It's such a healing process. And yeah, we encourage everyone to find what that is. And it's a daily thing, whether you're making soup or having a, uplifting conversation with a friend. It takes the creative urge is there all the time, and we want to use our gifts in the best way, because that's what we're meant to do.
Amy, do you see in other people when it comes to creativity, because you're such an amazing creator, do you find that the people that have blocked their humanity or blocked their emotions, they are the ones that struggle with finding that creative spark, whereas the ones that are willing to feel, the ones that are willing to look at everything that's taking place in the world, that's where the inspiration comes from to be able to produce things?
Yeah. I think it also is like a childlike way of looking at the world, where you're open to that fun and that adventure. But I do find, and I've seen this a lot, where people lose heart, if they've been rejected, or if somebody didn't have the right response to what they're doing, or basically people do it to themselves. I can't do that because somebody else does it so well, or, they compare themselves to other people instead of finding their uniqueness, which is what we want. We want them to understand their uniqueness and their unique way to express. But if you don't express it, it dies.
It does die. And then Monty, in regard to astrology has our cycles in there. And it seems to me that we have a destiny that is already written in the stars, that there's certain aspects of things we really can't change. We might think we have free will, but certain things really are just meant to be part of our roles and our aspects to fulfill. At least that's what it has felt like to me. Is that accurate? Is that inaccurate?
Well, I forget who said it, and I apologize to them, but it's been said that character is destiny. And because how you are and how you can react is going to guide you. The ancient Sumerians had a different word for fate and destiny. They said that, of course, I think the destiny was like the planets, and that, yeah, they can be changed, but it's really hard. It takes another planet-sized event to change it. And a fate was something that you actually could change. So I don't know how everybody else is, but I do.
That's where willpower comes in with astrology.
Exactly, because I feel like I have been in danger before, and being aware of it enabled me to, instead of having a car accident, to drop a dish.
You mean you saw it in your chart?
Well, I saw it afterwards, actually. I think if you're trying to diffuse your consciousness and to stay in the 3 levels that you were talking about before, Simran, I always comes back to, this society is so focused on focus and being smart and being successful and focus, but yet in martial arts, in driving, you're better off having a diffused consciousness, so your peripheral vision can come in and you can see the crazy person on the right and the crazy person on the left, because my favorite bumper sticker is "Caution, I drive as badly as you do." Because that was the first time I ever realized that spirituality worked, is when someone cut me off and I was like, well, maybe they're going to the hospital, someone's sick. I was like, oh wow, that's pretty amazing. So that's my answer
But astrology does help you know your gifts and your strengths and how to compensate for your weaknesses and to get and to understand what cycle you're in, because your book, it sounds like it's describing that in different ways, but astrology definitely addresses that. So if we know what cycle we're in, what cycle someone we live with is in, then we can make the best use of it to the highest good and greatest joy.
There are going to be challenges, right? Because you could be entering your spring while someone else you're with is entering their autumn or their winter.
Yep.
And so there's a synchronicity and then there's just the sync between you and someone else.
The sinkhole.
The kitchen sink or the sinkhole, right?
It happens, right? And at the same time, our life is a canvas. What we do with it is how we write on it. It will be reflected upon in many different ways. It's sort of, if you just think about on the emotional journeys we go on, like grief, we experience grief synchronously and asynchronously. And that's the challenge about emotion, right? Is that we are not living in one plane, right? We're in multiple dimensions at the same time. And so things process even years later and they affect you. It's sort of like if you've ever gone out into the photograph behind me, when I do my photographs of the Milky Way, it's really awe-inspiring to be in a place where you could see celestial light, where you can actually see that ancient light, because when you're looking up, whether you see it with your eyes or with a lens, you're actually looking at light that's literally a billion years old, 100 million years old, and 32 seconds old, all at the same time. And I use that to symbolically express how we could experience things both synchronously and asynchronously. The light that was literally created a billion years ago, I only saw at that moment. Light that was from a planet that's from a system not that far away, I'm seeing at that same moment too. So when that flattens, you sometimes can't even tell the difference because light is light. So you may not even appreciate the intensity that you're seeing the same biblical light, the light that people saw thousands of years ago at that place at the same time. And when it comes to grieving and other emotions, we also have that sync issue where we are in flow. So we're experiencing it with others, but then we're out flow and we're asynchronous when it happens. And so when you endure and have the blessing, of unconventional blessings, to keep the perspective that you're special, to keep the perspective that yes, you can do it, that you are now given that portal to enter to then take your journey to the next step. There may not be anyone else out there to push you forward, so you have to put yourself in motion. It's like things in motion stay in motion, but sometimes you have to take that action to put yourself there and to flow with it and to be comfortable to take that chance on you. And that is when you start to embrace that, right? Then now you're in control once again, right? It's not that we have absolute control of everything, but when you take those moments one at a time and add them together, it creates a very special coexistence.
There's something beauty about the time and the timelessness that you just described, because those moments that seem seconds away to those that are billions of years away, in that moment, they're actually at the same
time. Yes.
Yeah, yes. And they're timeless. And I think that that's the paradox of life, because we have duality, but it sits underneath all of oneness. It's within oneness. We have time and it sits within timelessness. And if we can understand that we're part of these two paradoxes, we're human beings, but that's within the divine being that we are. It's just we're focused on these illusions, which is some of those are the illusions. Time is one of the illusions, money, duality, even evolution, all of that's illusion, because we're so much more than that. We're that eternal. And I do believe that we have to keep ourselves moving forward and that we have to keep seeing ourselves for the truth of who we are. But I'm a little bit of a rebel in that I tell people there is so much power in the pause. There's so much power in stepping back to move forward, that aliveness is the full embrace of all of our emotions and all of our experiences, that we have to understand that it's inclusion of everything that creates our true consciousness and capacity to create infinitely. It's when we start to separate from all those aspects of ourselves, whether that's within us or outside of us, that we begin to lose the purpose for which we were born.
Well, that's why what your book is so important, because what we're talking about here today and in your books is like taking a shower. and it clears off the dirt, because I can just hear, because I've heard it, people hearing us talking and saying yes, but there's a tank coming down the street in Ukraine or in Yemen or all these other places. I'm like, yeah, and it's a great idea if you are prepared for it. And your book and these kind of conversations and this kind of show is all part of preparing for it, because as you said, it's a pulse. It's not going to, no one can stay in the cave. I mean, some people
Well, you
do.
can't control. A friend of
Right.
mine wrote a book called The Control Factor, and it's all about that tendency in all of us. If only this would happen, that would make everything okay. And if only they would shut up or, go away, then everything would be okay. And we see that in the polarity, the political polarity.
Wait a minute, if only they would shut up everything. No, I'm only kidding.
Careful what you wish for. Be careful what you wish for.
No, exactly.
But we know we have to relinquish the control. I guess that's sort of a different way of saying what you were saying, Simran, where you just pause and let go. And we're trying to let go of all these parts that, or pieces or illusions that don't work, because it's really kind of accepting that bigger picture. The same with, seeing the universe and this moment. We are specks. We're always joking about that, about being specks.
We're specks in Jeff's picture behind him. No, we know it.
But
We're just like these two lucky specks that have found each other in this incredible world.
Because we're so small, but we're big too, because we're all connected into this big whole.
The
I
sun.
think-
WHO.
Oh,
Finding the present, because we're so easily distracted. Or
yeah.
we cause interference without realizing we're causing interference. So it's about just every so often stepping back and saying, is this action, is this word, is this thought, is this a way for me to distract myself again? Or is this a way, if I do this, am I just interfering in another person's universe that I shouldn't be interfering in? I look at so much of what has happened, and we can apply this to anything. We can apply this to COVID. We can apply it to politics. We can apply it to our school systems, to our families. So often the steps and the actions that are taken, they end up being interference, which only creates more unconventional blessings. It's almost like we create these scenic routes for the universe to have to clean up on our behalf, because we haven't paused enough to really discern what's the right action, the right word, the right thought in this moment. And that's where the pause is so important. And the cleaning off and the shower that you're talking about is just necessary, but we slip into unconsciousness. I think human beings naturally, we're negative, we're distracted. That's just natural. We have to work at being positive. We have to work at keeping ourselves lifted, work at being better human beings, and to model that to others so that they know that it's something that we have to work at. Otherwise, the whole world could go into darkness, but it's because we're willing to do the hard things, and the hard things are pausing. The hard things are feeling. The hard things are being kind, being loving, giving an opportunity of forgiveness, of thinking that there's another reason that something might be happening, like you said, Monty, about the person cutting you off, than what we want to think. It really does take that moment by moment presence to ourselves, and where our mind wants to go instantaneously versus, okay, what's the higher truth here that's taking place?
Well, that's vigilance is what you're talking about. And we do have to do it every day and try to be as conscious as we can. I do find, because we talk about this a lot, using an oracle or the tarot to kind of read the energy now really helps you keep a perspective. And also for the block, there's always, you can pick a card, what's blocking you, and that changes, day to day, or depending on what you're going through. And sometimes that's a hard one to read, because there's not just one block in us that we carry through our lives. It's all these challenges. We stop or get stuck or don't want to change or don't want to adapt. And it's very important to, that's the gift of doing a reading, and to do a reading with other people, that you get their input also.
Hey, Simran, why don't we do a bibliomancy using one of your books, where we ask for a message for the whole group that's here today, and then you just open your book, and wherever
we don't have one, you have to do it.
Yeah, we don't have your book, so you have to do it, and wherever your eye lands, that's the oracle for the day. And everybody could do this with any book.
Yes.
Yeah. So
So see what you get for
like
us.
a reading for all of us. What do we
Okay,
need to know right now?
here we go. The earth, also known as Gaia, is a living being. It is an energetic body that you are deeply connected to. Commune with it at any time. Feel the bond of this connection by standing barefoot or placing your hands upon a tree. Like you, Earth has meridians and chakra points with energy that pulls. Between these points are lines of energy that connect the planet. The stronger of these lines, called ley lines, consist of supernatural energy, aligning with the energetic frequencies of Earth and raising and realigning the frequency of your body, while also providing growth, healing, and grounding. You are the great mystery in physical form. You are a crystal, a vortex, a portal, a moving ley line.
Beautiful.
That was perfect.
It's so perfect because it gives us something to do too, which
Yeah.
which is what we always want. Is like, what can I do about it? So
That's why I think this show is so important, because we always give people stuff to do, that to not feel helpless. This is my big problem with the news, whatever you want to call it,
it makes you feel helpless.
because it's like having a garbage truck come to your house every day and dump it in your living room and say, guess what? This is what's going on. Bye. And instead of saying, I'm always telling my friends who are in media, if you can come up with a show that gives people stuff to do, you'll be the most popular show on TV. So I have aspirations for Ask the Oracles, right, Jeff?
I get the 8 of Hearts for a collective, and see how she's pouring out tears. I think that's going to our emotions and our feelings that we can feel even more deeply, and
It means sacrifice.
feel for the sacrifice, that we all have made. And
the children, I think anyone who has children or is connected to children now has to be really on, I don't mean on them, but they've been traumatized by the last few years. I can't even imagine it.
That's like a self-care card, to really be aware of taking care of yourself, go back to the shower, take a healing shower, a healing bath, let yourself cry.
And
the water symbol.
And realize what we've done, because we're not coming back to this.
What did Michelle Marie get? I can't see.
Oh, she got the Scorpio card. Power.
Owner power.
Yeah.
When I think about sacrifice, I actually have a chapter in one of the books on sacrifice, and it was all about sacrificing our story, our lower self, even some of our history that carries forward these woundings and these stories that we keep perpetuating, sacrificing it so that we can accept and embrace the higher self, the oneness, the collective in its higher expression. And so that's
going back to creativity. I think sometimes you have to tell your story before you can let it go.
And that is a sacrifice.
Yeah.
That is a sacrificing of the identity to let that go.
Mm-hmm.
And coming back to the Scorpio card that Michelle Marie picked, I mean, that is death. The Scorpio, the scorpion distills and distributes death.
We don't like the death thing.
But that's the essence of spirituality. As Buddha said, the highest meditation is meditation on death.
We do try.
Because it centers you and it puts you back into realizing.
We talk about death a lot at home.
Here in the enchanted world, we do. I mean, we do, because if you don't embrace the entire spectrum, you're missing out, right?
Well, death is rebirth. It is the same. The flip
Let's
side.
hope. I mean, I have heard things from people on the other side, and I'm convinced I've heard it. And there is something out there, and I believe it because empirically I've seen it.
And people we respect have seen it and experienced it. I mean, countless times people say they've seen the spirit of their grandmother. Or
but I
had
haven't.
a dream. Well, you heard Zane meow the other night.
That is true. Oh, I forgot to say that. Because when I was going to sleep, I don't know if I convinced myself or what, but I heard it, and I didn't hear it in my mind's eye. I heard it in my ears. I heard it as if there was a cat in the room meowing. And of course, my first, as a scientist, is to say, you're full of it, Monty. You just.
That's up to me to say.
Oh, okay, so that's true. No, but it was like a miracle. We've been asking for a lot of miracles.
Well, it goes back to faith. When we get these signs and symbols, I mean, we could have our logical mind kick in, right? or you feel with your heart and your intuition, that you're being guided.
Well, that's what your book is so great about, Simran. It sounds like it is something that everybody needs to read at least a chapter a day, and just to keep themselves straight.
We look forward to it.
They're
And
meant to be read. They're meant to be read very slowly. And I say that in the book, and I've been repeating it as much as possible. These are not books that are to be breezed through. A few lines, maybe a paragraph, perhaps one page is all anyone should read per day.
that's all I can read.
Right.
Well, and they're the kinds of books.
We're
you can
not
read
writing when
other
we're
things.
not writing.
Yeah, you can read other things at the same time. They're really meant to work within you. And the way they're written, they're going to make you go slow because it's deep and it has you contemplate throughout the day without you trying to contemplate. It's working in your inner world, whether you know it or not. So
Well, it sounds like a
Thank you.
life-changing book.
It's
We need to wrap up.
we're wrapped up. We're like the hour went by.
One of our best shows, I think.
ever.
Thank you, Simran. That was awesome.
That was so
Thank you.
beautiful. Thank you so much. That was so wonderful to have you as a guest. And wow. By the way, where are your books available? When they are available, where can people find them?
Amazon, Barnes and Noble, anywhere books are sold, or directly on my website at iamsimran.com.
And you
Thank
are.
you so much for having me.
Thanks, Simran. Thanks everyone for joining us.
She's the original gangster of 1111.
That's right.
Wow.
Yeah, she is. She's OG. Forget it.
Well, thank you so much for being here. Lauren, thank you for producing.
Thanks, Lauren.
Thank you, Pulver Entertainment, for having our show.
Oh, we are really grateful. And as we say, if it's Mondays, it's time for
Ask the Oracles. The other thumb is for Zane.